good to have you here today, and thanks for joining us. And we would like to talk with you about things that you are really an expertise, like meditation, neuroscience, and we're living in a moment of a collective moment where people want to evolve. People want to have a greater awareness, consciousness, and many times we struggle because the old way of thinking, and we battle with that, sometimes from a micro level, I would say, because our ego wants to be right, or in a macro level because social structure that tell us how to think, for example.
Sure.
I know you are very much in this way of evolving, of having greater awareness, and you are helping people to do so. And for that, we need to change the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we act. And one way that you have to help people is bringing this new science, epigenetics, and neuroplasticity. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How epigenetics, for example, how changing our emotions, we're changing our genes.
Wow, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Well, I think that in an age of information, in which we're in, ignorance is a choice. And people are waking up because they don't need a teacher, they don't need a doctor, they don't need a priest or an authority to gain information. Technology allows us to access information. So if knowledge is power, knowledge about ourself is self-empowerment. So people are beginning to empower themselves and take in the concept of mind into their life, into their jobs, into their sport, into their careers, into their home life, because using your mind is the start of everything. So we're not hardwired to be a certain way for the rest of our lives, and we're not doomed by our genes. That we are marvels of adaptability and change. And how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. So the present personality who's watching this show has created the present personal reality called their life. Which means if you want to create a new life, a new personality, you have to change your personality. And that means you're going to have to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it. You're going to have to become conscious of your unconscious habits and behaviors and modify them. And you're going to have to look at certain emotions that keep you connected to the past and decide if those emotions belong to your future. And I think that most people try to create a new personal reality, a new life, as the same personality, and it doesn't work. We have to become someone else. So when people begin to look at their thoughts, think about what they're thinking about, become aware of how they're acting and feeling, and notice the emotions they're living by, they begin to separate themselves from those automatic unconscious programs that we live by every single day. So then it's very possible then, when a person literally changes who they are, that diseases go away because the disease exists in the old personality and they've become someone else.
Is this epigenetics already?
Yes, so think about it. Less than 5%, more like 1% of this people on this planet are born with a genetic condition like type 1 diabetes or sickle cell anemia or Tay-Sachs disease. The other 95 to 99% is created by lifestyle and behaviors. So then science came along and said it was the environment that signals the gene. Well, the outer environment does signal the gene, but let's look at two people working side by side in a factory, both exposed to the same chemical, right? One gets cancer and the other doesn't. Well, the internal environment of your body is still the outer environment of the cell. And what controls the internal environment of our body are emotions. So if the environment signals the gene, and the end product of an experience in your environment is an emotion, if you're living by the same emotional state every single day, you keep signaling the same gene. Now the body's a protein-producing machine. And proteins are responsible for the structure and function of your body. So as you keep selecting and instructing the same gene over and over again, you keep making the same protein, and over time, you begin to wear that gene out. And all of a sudden, it starts to make a cheaper protein. So then the question is, can you signal the gene ahead of the environment? And we've proven this in our research. We've taken people with high cortisol levels and measured their stress hormones, and we measured a chemical called immunoglobulin A, the primary defense against bacteria and viruses. It's better than any flu shot. And instead of them feeling anger and aggression and competition and fear and anxiety and pain, which creates cortisol, we asked them for 10 minutes a day to feel gratitude, love, kindness, care, appreciation, and compassion. And we wanted to see if it would actually signal the gene to strengthen their immune system and make IgA, immunoglobulin A. At the end of 4 days, their cortisol levels went down about 1/5, and their IgA levels went up by 50%. Now, if a pharmaceutical company found a drug that could stimulate your immune system like that, they would be selling it all the time. And yet, our immune system, it can be regulated, and our nervous system is our best pharmacist in the world. So when people begin to change their emotional states, when they begin to break habits, they begin to signal new genes, experience-dependent genes, behavior-dependent genes, that begin to produce different outcomes in their health and in their life. And so being able to sustain that state is why we practice so much.
Right. Fantastic. Let's talk about the moment we're living in, Joey. We live in a moment where we're always connected, 24 hours, 7 days. We have tons of information every day, and that takes a lot of energy from us. We have to process all this energy. And also, we live a historic moment, I think, where there's a lot of things going on. No? There are wars in the world, there are natural catastrophes like earthquakes, floods, a lot of politic tensions. Right now, we're living that a lot here in Spain, in Catalonia. And it seems like we have to retreat a little bit out of this, so we don't drown into the waves, so that we can surf the wave, I would say, yeah? And meditation seem like something like a resource, easy resource we all have. We only need to breathe and sit down and go in work. I think you're very fond of this, no? Doing this in work, no? What do you think about that?
Well, I think many people are overstimulated by technology, and we're living in a very, very important time in history right now, because so many infrastructures and paradigms are breaking down, politically, economically, socially, religion, the environment, the medical model, the educational model. Everything's collapsing to some degree, which means something greater has to be born out of that. The old has to fall away before the new happens or is born. So meditation is a great way for us to disconnect from the stimulation in our environment, to get beyond our connection to our body and get beyond the concept of time.
Right.
And when we disconnect from our body, our environment, and time, something natural happens. Our arousal in the brain and the body begins to settle down, and our brain waves begin to change from an aroused state of what's called beta brain waves to alpha brain waves, and for some people, theta brain waves. And not just any type of alpha or theta brain waves, very organized and very coherent brain waves. So when the brain is coherent, more neurons are communicating better together, and the brain's functioning more holistically. When we're living in stress or overstimulated, different compartments of the brain are subdivided.
Right.
And now it's like a house divided against itself. The hormones of stress actually cause it to get even worse. We go into a very high beta brainwave pattern.
Right.
And as we shift our attention from one person to one problem to one thing to one place, there's neurological networks that are assigned to every person or thing or experience we've ever had. And so the quick shifting of attention span begins to cause the brain to produce incoherent brainwave patterns. And under stress, we narrow our focus on matter, on objects, on things, because the primitive system causes us to begin to look for the threat in our outer environment. And people get stuck in these patterns. So when you slow your brain waves down and create more coherence, and you're moving into alpha and theta, you begin to merge your conscious mind with the autonomic nervous system.
Right.
And as consciousness falls out of the neocortex, the autonomic nervous system begins to step in. Now, the autonomic nervous system's job is to create wholeness and balance and health. So all of a sudden, it's almost like the nervous system gets a reboot. It gets a more organized systemic change. So the heart rate slows down, the stress hormones go away, the immune system has a chance to get back online and dial up. You start having digestive processes start to improve because you're moving out of state of survival. And your body turns on a system for growth and repair. So aside from the fact that that happens, new neurons grow in the brain, more gray matter is activated. There's all kinds of amazing changes that happen with our hormones, and even if it's just for 20 minutes a day, the person, a person can disconnect from their body, their environment, and time.
Right.
For the most part, when they come back, they'll feel like they slept, a good 4 hours if they've done it properly. And I think that just that simple process, making it a habit, would keep people healthier and happier.
That's great. Let's stop a moment here for people that might listen to this interview about the brainwave states. What do we need to know? Because maybe for some of us we know what is a beta wave or alpha or zeta. Just can you give us a few tips?
Sure.
So when we are aware we're in beta?
Yeah, so think of beta, like just think about your brain's job. Your brain's job is to create meaning between what's going on in your outer world and what's going on in your inner world of thoughts and feelings. It creates coherence or meaning between our outer world and our inner world.
Right.
And so when you're conscious and you're awake, your senses plug you into the environment. So that's a lot of information. You're feeling things, you're hearing things, you're seeing things, you're smelling things, you're tasting things, and your brain has to get all that information and process it and turn it into meaning.
Right. And that's beta.
That's beta. So the brain's busy when in beta. Now, most people function in low-level beta. They have a certain level of their awareness in their environment, and you can think about beta as most of your attention on your outer world.
Right.
But if there's a threat, or you almost get in a car accident, or you get bad news, your brain waves will pick up into a more aroused state because the stress hormones turn on. And now the over-arousal causes you to pay more attention to your outer world.
Right.
You pay more attention to your body in relative to space and time. And in high beta, it's an emergency.
Right.
In high beta, now there's a threat. So when you're in regular low-level beta, you naturally move from beta to alpha, and your brain pauses for a few minutes. And the pausing of the brain allows you to go from your outer world to paying attention to your inner world. And the process of doing that causes you to go from beta brainwave patterns to alpha brainwave patterns. And in alpha, think of alpha as rest and relaxation, calm, and
So the moment we close our eyes and
exactly.
do a deep breath.
So right. So if you close your eyes and disconnect from your outer world, you have less sensory information coming to your brain. If you play soft music in the background, you disconnect more from your environment. If you're sitting your body down and you're not eating anything or drinking anything or tasting anything or smelling anything or feeling anything, that's even less information coming to your brain. If you're not thinking about your future or your past, but you're in the present moment, wow, all of a sudden, your brainwaves slow into very coherent alpha patterns. Now, if you keep relaxing, your body begins to fall asleep, you move into a deep state of trance, but your body is sleeping, but your mind is somewhat awake, and that's theta. Yeah, it's slow active, that's theta. And theta is like twilight, it's like a hypnotic state. That's when you're highly suggestible to information. Now when you fall asleep, you move into what's called delta, and that's restorative sleep. So being able, we normally go from beta to alpha to theta to delta when we go to bed at night. And when we wake up in the morning, we go from delta to theta to alpha to beta. So what we want to do is teach people how to sit up and begin to learn the terrain, the sensation of when they're in each of these levels, so that they can be able to gain more control of their mind.
What about gamma?
Well, we've done extensive measurements.
Extraordinary, yeah?
Well, we've done extensive measurements on gamma in the last 2 years.
I heard.
And gamma is kind of like superconscious. And instead of the brain getting aroused from some type of predator or some type of threat in your outer world, the brain gets aroused from energy from the body moving up to the brain. And when it begins to move up to the brain, it activates the limbic brain, which is the seat of your autonomic nervous system, through a gate called the thalamic gate, and all of a sudden that energy is moving right to the neocortex. And now gamma is even a faster frequency than high beta, but it's very compressed and it's very orderly. So we could call that super conscious or super aware. But now, normally in gamma, whatever's happening in your mind is more real than anything that's happening in your outer world, and it captures all the brain's attention.
Can we talk about quantics here?
Well, absolutely. So when people start to connect to a greater field of information called the quantum field, and they start experiencing greater degrees of wholeness and oneness, we see the brain, we could actually predict it now when they're going to go into gamma. We know the patterns, and we can say, oh, she's about ready to go. And within...
Can you give us a tip about that? How can you predict that? What is sign? Or
we start seeing, we start seeing very profound changes in amplitude. So here's a wave, and all of a sudden you have another wave that's working with that wave. And when those two waves start working together, they build a bigger wave. So we start seeing in the brain like this very strong patterns of high amplitudes, and then it settles down. And then boom, another high amplitude. And then we know it's going to keep building, it's going to get bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden the whole brain goes into gamma, and it usually lasts for some time, and the person is in ecstasy.
it's an ecstasy.
The person is in bliss, yeah.
I don't know if that will be just about the right moment about talking about the brain wave and the intention.
Well, I think there's a delicate balance between intention and surrender. And I think it requires, I think it requires both in the creative process. And, and if intention is getting clear on what you want. Surrender is trusting in something doing it for you, right?
You got to be humble, no?
Yes, but if you're over-intentional, now you're trying. If you're over-surrendered, then you're lazy and you're lethargic. So when you're intentional, the forebrain turns on, the frontal lobe turns on. We see this all the time. But then when the person surrenders, the forebrain turns off. They're not thinking any longer. They're letting go and they're surrendering. So I think that balance is the challenge, and it takes a little practice to get there.
Is this the sweet spot of the present moment?
Yeah,
What is the sweet spot of the present moment? I love that.
Well, think about this. Some people do the same exact thing that they did yesterday. They wake up, they go through their...
99%.
Yeah, they wake up and they start their same routine.
Right.
So
And think the same, and feel the same,
and their
and do the
bodies,
same.
their body's on autopilot, and their body
Autopilot,
is actually dragging them into a predictable future based on what they've done in the past, and they're never in the present moment. They've actually lost their free will to a program. So then, when you teach people to begin to keep their attention in the present moment, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. If you start thinking about your problems, and those problems are connected to the memories of certain people at certain times, and those problems create certain emotions like unhappiness or sadness, and you keep your attention on those emotions, then your attention and your energy is in the past. So most people are siphoning energy out of the present moment because they're trying to predict the future based on the past. Teaching people about that present moment says that all possibilities exist in the quantum field in the present moment. So then how do you get a person to get beyond their body, their habits, their emotions, to get beyond their identity that's connected to people in their lives, the things they own, the places they go, and time itself?
Right.
The act of doing that causes them to be in that generous present moment, and when you're truly there, you start feeling more whole. You start feeling more complete because you're less preoccupied with,
There's this brain coherence that you were talking about.
and the brain goes into very, very high levels of coherence.
I've been following you for at least the past 5 years, been in your workshops and everything, and it's fantastic to know that what you do in your workshops, trying to energize the brain, open the heart, and recondition the body. And I know you're doing research non-stop. And what would be the newest in your workshops these days? We are excited.
Yes,
We're
yes.
excited for the coming workshop in Sitges, Barcelona, very soon.
Yes. Well, I can speak with more conviction now than I've ever spoke before because of the measurements we've done. We've measured
all the data.
we've measured telomere lengths now. We've measured gene regulation.
Oh, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. We took a group of random students, and we measured 7,500 different gene regulations at the start of a workshop and at the end. And at the end of just a few days, all those students upregulated 8 new genes. They had 8 genes in common. Genes that suppress cancer growth in tumors. Genes to grow new neurons, not just make new connections, but neurogenesis, grow new neurons. Yeah, grow new neurons in their brain. Genes that suppress oxidative stress. Genes that stimulate stem cells to go to damaged areas, damaged tissues and cells, and repair them. Genes that strengthen the immune system. Genes that give the cells healthy structure, all in just a few days. And so
5 days, 2 days?
It was 4 days. Yeah, 4 days. So it's a very important time. Yeah, because people are doing it. They're actually doing it. So our telomere research will come in another month, but telomeres tell us our biological age. And I believe that we can reverse that, given the proper instruction, and so we're measuring that as well. You can reverse age. And if think about it, if your telomeres lengthen just by 10%, you get 10% of your life back. If they lengthen by 20%, you get 20% of your life back. So I'm very passionate about the research, and so I'll talk about some of that at the event in November.
That would be great. Very, very excited to be there. And just to finish, just before we finish, Joe, you're saying also that we should be more loving and more kind with ourselves and also with the people around us, because everybody is going through their own challenges and struggles in life. And so do you think we should be more compassionate and the world will change?
I don't think that it's something we should have to do.
No.
I think I actually think we're innately wired to be that way. I think that the hormones of stress cause us to feel quite a bit of separation.
Yes.
I think the hormones of stress cause us to become addicted to our emotions. I think the hormones of stress cause us to not want to open our hearts because when we're in stress, we're in survival. So why would you open your heart if you're being chased by a predator? Why would you want to learn anything new? Why would you want to go within? Why would you want to sit down and be still? Why would you want to be vulnerable? All of those things go against the survival gene. And so teaching people how to connect with that state and trade their pain and their suffering or their guilt for care and kindness and compassion, and teach them, like a practice, how to do that over and over again. They begin to change their brain chemistry. We measure that. They begin to change their oxytocin levels. We measure that. They create more heart coherence, which means more energies in their heart. And they can tell the difference between when they're feeling those emotions and when they're not. And if you get good at it, then you can regulate internal states independent of any condition in your external environment. And I think that's when you begin to master your environment. So, but if you don't practice it, then for the most part, then you'll live by the other emotions of fear and anger and frustration and judgment and competition and envy and resentment, and those are all derived from the hormones of stress. So I do think that it's our innate ability to be that way. I think it's our innate capacity to want to take care of one another, to connect, to give, to love. I think that's who we really are when we're not in survival. So many people say, well, I can't open my heart because of all these problems in my life or what's going on in the political situation in my country. Yeah, I've been hurt, or I don't trust anymore. Well, there's no other person that's affecting more than yourself.
That's right.
1,400 different chemicals are released by the body the moment we start feeling those elevated emotions that begin to repair and regenerate it. So we want people to see that the benefits of it. The stress hormones signal about 1,200 different chemicals that begin to push the genetic buttons that create disease. So we have to make a choice, no matter what, no matter valid or justified or not. Living by those emotions long term are going to really begin to change your brain and body.
Fantastic. So with this last message, Joe, I think we want to thank you, and I think it's the best way to finish, thinking about how we can amplify this kindness one to the other, and be more compassionate and more loving. So thanks a lot.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And we'll see you in the workshop.
All right, I'm looking forward to being in Spain again.
Yeah, great, fantastic. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.